Hello and welcome to a fully narrated cross-country gliding video. This is made for those that are a little more interested in what decisions cross-country pilots make. Here's the guy in front launching. That's a LS3 standard with winglets. Full of water, taking his time. Got overflown by a military training aircraft. That was nice.
Flies! You're in. Don't wear it out.
Alright, we're connected to the tow plane. I've just been doing my checks for control axis, my harness. The tug on the right, the red one, was having a bit of an airspeed indicator problem, so he's just doing a high-speed taxi while we launch. Or, not exactly at the same time. Just doing a flap check there, setting them for negative for takeoff to have better aileron authority, checking again for control access. I've looked at my instruments, my radio, we're all good, so there's the thumbs up to my wing runner. Got a little bit of water on today, so it'd be good for the wing runner to hold the wings level just until we've got enough airspeed over the wings that I can hold them up.
X-ray Uniform Sierra, water on board, 65 knots please.
That is copied, Ryan. You're ready for takeoff. Sub Bravo to Papa is taking up spec. The now traffic. Go ahead, Bravo to Papa is rolling to a best glider and tow vanilla.
Let the tow plane know as well that I have water, so it can fly a little bit faster for me. And
To have some fun.
X-ray Papa, the tow plane, just gave a takeoff call.
cumulus.
Rolling 08 left. That means she'll be taken off with me on tow. You can see the other tow plane out to the right, coming back, so they clear out our way. Here comes the
A little bit of
tow
wheel
rope.
brake so we don't run over the rope.
Yeah, as I said there, a bit of wheel brake just to hold
go.
it straight.
Hold the wings level. Onto the main wheel.
Kind of explained it there, didn't I? Flying speed, 0, flap, takeoff. We're in what's called high tow position, where we're positioning ourselves above the prop wash, the air that's coming off the prop that's quite turbulent. I'm going to hold this station behind the tow plane, as it's called, all the way up. Just adjusting the vents there. Aero-tows are quite different to really any type of flying out there, I think. Being towed by another aircraft, you have different kind of control axes you deal with. Still obviously fly like an aircraft, but you've got some forward stability, I guess, because generally you're being pulled forward. Bit of turbulence there. I'm just saying I'm going to remember that turbulence. Maybe there's a thermal there I can come back to. And this whole tow, right from the roll to now, and certainly all the way up, I'm looking at my options if there's a rope break. Looking down at the paddocks below, what height I am, what angle I am to get back in. That sometimes you'll be able to just do a 180 and land back in the direction you took off, but sometimes you can't. So you need to always have options in a sailplane, in any plane really.
That's pretty strong there too. Probably want another 500 feet at least before releasing.
That's what I say there, so we're making sure that we've got plenty of height so that when we release I've got a bit of time to find a thermal without having to land straight away. Because the whole intention today is actually to go somewhere, rather than just take off and land. So a little air vent there. I think I was just checking that works.
smoky up here.
And that'll be a bit of an understatement, as you'll see going into the flight. There'll be a lot of smoke around. There's a lot of fires that have been set by farmers to burn off the previous crop, so they can get the land ready for the next crop. This is happening at the end of summer. Well, I guess it's technically autumn now. There's the release there. Pulled the yellow handle, turned away from the tow plane, turned one way, tow plane turned the other way. Just put the gear up as well, so you can hear it get a little quieter.
Okay.
And I'm trying to sit myself in that thermal that I thought I was around when I released. Listening to the positive beeps of the Vario. I feel like there was something there. But it's proving a little bit difficult to centre. So we're at 2,400 sea level, which above ground is 1,500 feet here. A little bit more actually. You can see the needle on that Vario now is now well below the zero. We're not in any lift anymore. So I'm going to have to find another area where thermals may be. That one that I released in either isn't there anymore or has finished rising.
Copy Foxtrot Alpha, break, no traffic, Mike, Charlie Foxtrot 2, only runway 08 left, glider on tow, Vanilla.
You can hear there's another few launches going on. You would have seen from the shots at the beginning there's a lot of aircraft around today, so we always need to be listening carefully to the radio and transmitting as well, letting everyone know where we are and what our intentions are as well. You can see these two fluffy clouds up ahead. I'm thinking, well, if I go over this way maybe there'll be a bit of lift, but I don't have too much height to play with if I still want to get back to the airfield if I can't have a launch. So not flying too fast towards them, trying to maintain a bit of altitude, and thought there was something there. There wasn't, and that wastes a little bit of time and height doing turns like that. That's the thing we're always trying to avoid. So you can see we're pretty well under the cloud now. There doesn't seem to be any lift. In fact, there's a bit more sink than is normal in still air. So I thought, well, looking back to the airfield, as you can see in the distance there, that angle's pretty shallow, so I thought, I'm now 1,200 feet above the ground, let's head back towards the airfield and find a thermal over there, because I didn't find anything under that cloud. There's a few factories down on the right you can see, one that is a chipboard factory, one that makes concrete precasting. They can usually be good thermal sources, they tend to get a bit warm. So I'll fly over this chipboard factory here on the way back towards the airfield just to see if there'll be a thermal there. You can see there's a little smokestack that tends to indicate, if nothing else, which way the wind's going. See, it's blowing from the right to the left, so from north to the south, so a little bit of a northerly today. There we go, I think I'm where that thermal is meant to be, near the smokestack, 1,000 feet above the ground, which is about 350 meters, 330, something like that. Giving a little turn here and I'm like, yes, it's gone positive, there's definitely something here. And then negative, nothing. So if there is something here, I'm not quite centered it, which is what you can see me doing there, rolling out and then rolling back in again, trying to center the thermal. If you want to be climbing and turning in the core of the thermal, that's where the lift is strongest and you'll go up fastest. There's two tow planes launching, so the about 10 to 15 gliders that there was lined up will all get launched within the hour. It does get pretty busy. A few astute people might have noticed as I was going around in that turn, there's another tow plane and a glider. As we come around to the left now, we might see it. And they're well above me, so people, and there it is just there. Other people are taking a much higher tow than the altitude that I'm at now. This is not an altitude that you want to be trying to climb. It's an altitude that you really don't have as many options because you don't have as much time in still air before you have to decide to go and land for safety. We have these cut-off altitudes, so to speak, where we don't want to try and thermal for too much longer. We want to make sure we're just focusing on landing safely. So I'm still working this area. We've gone up maybe 100 feet in the last couple minutes, but it's pretty broken. I also haven't flown this aircraft for a while, so I may be out flying it as coordinated as I could. You can see the nose is a little bit about the place, but a lot of that is intentional, and it's me trying to broaden or narrow my circle to try and place myself in the middle of the thermal.
Traffic, Mike Charlie Foxtrot, long fire, runway 26 right, and glider on turn visual.
The other option I have is reducing a little bit of weight. I could dump the water at this situation. I've got about 100 kilos of water on board, and if I was to dump that, I would climb a little bit better. My minimum sink rate decreases a little bit. But if we can, we want to try and keep that water on, because in the cruise, which is probably 60 to 70% of your entire flight, you can go a lot further. Sorry, you can fly a lot faster for the same sink rate, and actually therefore cover more distance, which is why people tend to bring water with them and make their glider heavier than it normally is on good cross-country flying days. It's just that penalty of minimum sink rate that you have to deal with. But if there's good strong thermals, then that doesn't really matter that you sink a little bit faster, because that's made up for by much stronger thermals. There's a tow plane out to the right there with a glider, might have seen. I'm also using a slightly different lens, I guess, for this flight. It's a little bit fish-eyed. We'll give you a little wider view, but let me know in the comments if you prefer the standard, less stretched picture. I think this isn't bad because you get to see a little bit more out of the front, but I don't know, the distortion might make people feel a bit sick. So let me know. Alright, there's another 100 feet. 1200 feet once more. And that vario needle is still hovering around 0 for the most part. You can see I changed my direction. Not something you would do if there was another glider nearby, because you want to try and remain predictable and have everyone turning the thermal the same way. But I felt I could do that to make a correction. And it might have worked a little bit.
Mike Charlie Foxtrot, reading you 5x5. 5x5, thank you. At least 65 knots on the launch. I have a light load of water. Copy, it's 65 knots. Mike Charlie Foxtrot. And can you confirm crew name, please?
Still trying to center this thing. I really want just a nice climb so I can start off towards those cumulus clouds in the distance. I think it was about 12:30 at this point in time. Took off about 12. So that's really meaning that we're flying in the weak part of the day when the thermals are just starting out, so there's enough heating going on that you'll get them. So if I was to launch half an hour earlier than I did, I probably wouldn't have stayed up. I would have had to land again, and that's one thing that limits our flight time, is when the good weather is, when there is convection, which is another word for unstable air. And if you've got an unstable air, you've got air that's going up and some that's going down, and try and stay in the stuff going up and you can have a good long glider flight. So we're really using the full length of the day on this flight. Hear some nice noises coming out now. It's another 100 feet just about. Be really nice now to hook into this one. Another 400 feet now, so
That's more like it.
you can hear me there. Quite happy that the thermal I'm in is established and I'm established in it. For those looking at the instruments, the 3 at the top, one on the left, obviously airspeed indicator there.
Very low there. Back to almost the height I'd have to commit to landing again. So that's nice that didn't happen. We found something. We're going to climb up, cross the start line, and head north.
There you go. I didn't know if I was going to commentate this during or after, so you might get a few
drinking water.
A few double comments like that. Hopefully that's not too annoying. Yes, the 3 instruments at the top there. You've got an airspeed indicator on the left, and then the one in the middle and the one on the right are both varios. The one to look at between those two is the one on the right, the one that says Borgelt on it. That one's the one that's making the noise. It's also a bit more accurate. So try and look at that right-hand vario for this flight rather than the centre one with the big numbers on it. The scale is still the same. You've still got 10 all the way at the top and bottom.
Make my rudder pedals more comfortable.
And 5 halfway. So just have a look at them. You might have seen when I took off, the altitude of the airfield is 600 feet above sea level roughly. So now we're exactly 2,000 feet above the airfield. Almost above the airfield.
Not much around here, so we'll head over to the glider in front of us.
And I'm feeling much more comfortable at 2,000 feet. It's enabling me to expend...
Still down there on the left.
There you go. A whole bunch of gliders all lined up. I was
just taken off.
The second one to launch. You can see one actually launching at the moment. But yeah, that little bit of extra height's given me the ability to spend some of it to go some distance, and I'm spending some of it now to go to a glider, which is
right.
Straight on. You might be able to see it just turning there, because he's higher than me and he's turning, which generally indicates there's a thermal there, and I guess it could be she as well, but there's a thermal there that I want to get to. There's another glider out on the left there, just on the nose now. So a few others that launched after me actually managed to climb higher, partly because they probably took a higher tow than I did, but they also weren't working all that weak lift that I was working down by the chipboard factory. A little bit of air because it's fogging up. Whether it's me breathing heavily or getting warm, I'm not sure. A little bit of cool air in will get rid of that. That little handle I'm adjusting on the dashboard there is the vent that brings air through the nose up over the top of the instruments towards my face.
Lovely aircraft, just climbs by itself.
Gliders are inherently stable, as you can see there. You take your hands off the controls, they're not going to try and fly themselves into the ground or anything like that. They're quite stable, and a lot of that's due to them being very, well, trying to be as aerodynamic as possible. And successful aerodynamics in the glider world is low drag and high lift. So you want a glider that is first of all very low coefficients of drag, but also one that generates a good amount of lift out of its wings, and sometimes need a trade between those two to get the wing design you want and glide design in total. This aircraft is from 1978, I believe, maybe 79, but somewhere in the late 70s there. It's LS3A. It's a club-owned aircraft, and one that I've hired for the day. It's flapped, as you've seen. There's a handle on the left, the white one, it's the flap lever. That blue handle is the air brake, which pops out of the wing, and most have seen them used mostly for landing. They're very good at adjusting our glide approach, or approach angle rather, into where we're trying to land. There's a few other things I can point out on the dash there. That red handle is for canopy release, but not in the normal sense where we're just getting in and out, but in the emergency sense.
About at 3,000 feet, woohoo!
So that's something I would pull if I need to get out the aircraft. There's a few other handles that are a little bit out of frame, and it allows me to leave the aircraft relatively quickly if I ever find myself in that situation. I haven't. Certainly don't intend to, but it's a good thing to have. You can see above that red handle there's a battery switch and a voltage next to it. That's just the battery master for all the instruments, and a screen to the left of that, which is a navigation aid that in this case I'm not using. I've got my own, you can see on the right there. That's why the screen's off on that. Quite a lot of our instruments, however, are mechanical and don't A lot of our instruments are actually mechanical though and don't require any battery power. So the airspeed indicator is just done through basically a pressure plate, bringing some air through the nose. So we don't need any battery for that. The altimeter, this is barometric. So the altimeter will work whether there's battery or not. And that vario in the center at the top.
I'm trying to eke out another 1,000 feet or so and then we'll start.
Yeah, that instrument at the top in the middle is also mechanical, using static ports around the aircraft to figure out if you were going up or down. Got a compass there, it's also mechanical of course, above the yellow handle, and a radio down the bottom there that says COM, with a couple handles and a few buttons for adjusting frequencies and volumes. And I'll be operating that quite a lot through the day when I enter different areas and when I'm talking to other gliders around and other aircraft. All aircraft in the same area will likely have will likely be operating at least one of the frequencies that are the same as everyone else, so we will always be able to talk to each other. And I've got on my device a list of frequencies depending on which area I'm in, and of course a manual map as well that I'll use to make sure I can talk to everyone. So we've now got our starting altitude. I'm going to head out across the top of the airfield, which I've set in my map as a start line, my moving map that is. And we'll fly around from that point and try and finish our flight above the airfield as well. And a lot of that's to do with the online points that you can get from the flight. I can discuss that at the end. That little beep is my device saying task started, and I'm going to be travelling out roughly to the northeast here. This is now mostly east, but
Alright, task start.
my general task direction is to the northeast for the first turn point, and then back out to the west, and then down south again, back to Benalla. So now we're pretty much in racing mode. We're at an altitude where we don't have to take every thermal. So we're going to wait as much as we can for the stronger ones, and also try and fly in the strongest air, or the air that's going down the least, as we're trying to get to our turn point. And there's quite a lot of decisions that differentiate pilots, and also that all pilots have to make, glider pilots that is, in how they want to get to their turn point. Do they go just in a straight line no matter what? Do you make little deviations towards good weather and where you think there might be good thermals? And it's all a trade-off, and that's where gliding either becomes more of a science or an art, depending on the type of person you are. You can be very mathematical about, okay, I have to take a certain strength of thermal while I'm at one height, or okay, I'm just going to feel and see what the aircraft tells me about the air I'm flying in. You can see I made a turn there, and I was only going up in the first little bit, so that's not necessarily a very good circle. well, it's not a good circle there. You can really see those clouds are developing well now. You can see I started to make a turn there.
Roll into it.
Started to make a turn there, and I was getting a good feeling at the start of it, but as soon as I did begin the turn, my Vario stopped making noise, told me there's no more lift around, so I left it. Also because there's a few other gliders in front of me that I'm going to try and join in the thermal that they're already in, because why try and find your own when someone's already found a nice one.
Another glider down to the left, there's one up top.
And you can see the instrument above the middle Vario there with the lights on it, the orange lights. That's an anti-collision system. So you can see it telling me there's a glider to my left and a little bit below. It's also saying there's one almost in front, above.
Whoa, that's a good one.
And that is exactly where the other aircraft are. So gliders have this and a few other aircraft, this kind of anti-collision system, and it's just another layer of safety. And it will flash and make lots of noise if you get too close to another aircraft.
Okay, Foxtrot is Bateman Razor 8, full stop, number 1 for now.
That's the noise there. So did you see the glider just across the left there? That doesn't necessarily mean I did something wrong, nor does it mean the other aircraft did something wrong. It's just advisory. But if you're flying out in the middle of nowhere and that instrument starts screaming at you, you might just want to brake right, because it could be something you can't see. In this situation I can see those two other aircraft, but it's always the one you don't see.
And these guys are.
It's always the one you don't. Anyway, you can see there this thermal's quite gusty. It's quite strong and then quite weak. It's not very consistent. That's making it difficult for me to climb. So I probably would have left this thermal if I wasn't by other aircraft.
Time, really?
There you go, you hear me say it's a bit of a waste of time.
Go up.
But the reason I'm more doing it is just because it's fun flying around other aircraft. You don't necessarily have to be racing cross country to be having fun. Sometimes just floating around with your mates is good. So you can see I was adjusting my flap handle there as well when we finished the thermal and then went into the cruise. You can fly slower when you have positive flap on, because it increases your lift and increases your drag with your wing, and that'll enable you to do thermal slower and tighter, which would hopefully mean you'll be in the middle of the thermal going up faster than someone that doesn't pull on extra flap. And then you have the opposite effect where you put negative flap on, which decreases the lift but also decreases the drag of your wing, so you can fly faster. And generally speaking, if you've got two aircraft that are exactly the same, the aircraft with flaps will perform better. Simply if they use the flaps correctly. You can still use them wrong.
He's going up, let's go to him.
There you go. Stepping out to the northeast, finding another glider that around and going to him where there is thermals. Where there's, sorry, a thermal already. But you can see all these other gliders bar one that I've seen so far have all been above me, so I had a bit of a torrid time there after my launch. There's the thermal. And unfortunately there I kind of flew through most of it before centering. But this is far better than the thermal that I've been in, or any of the thermals I've been in previously, so this was quite a nice one to get into. think what happens is...
Afternoon, Delta Quebec. This is Mike Charlie Foxtrot. Can I just confirm crew name, please? Roger, Kruger, GCV member.
I think what's going to happen is the other gliders that I left from that first thermal are going to come across to this one, as gliders tend to do. We're always watching out for other aircraft or other gliders and seeing what they're doing, and if they're climbing faster, well, probably better to be over there than where you are, within reason, depending how far away they are, or if you think you've got something better. This is much nicer. We're almost 3,000 feet above ground now, which gives us even more options than 2, which gave us even more options than 1, as you've seen.
Another traffic loader Golf Whiskey uniform radio check.
It's just a bit soft. It's just a bit soft.
Traffic, contact Bravo X Papa is rolling direct, that's Aero-tow, Canada.
Yeah, no point hanging around in that.
Exactly. No point hanging around in a weak thermal when you've got options with your height. Much better to keep going and find another one. Unless, of course, it's the last thermal of the day. There's definitely no other thermals in the sky. Then you don't want to leave that thermal. You can see there a little pull-up I did. Don't actually have to thermal to gain height. If you just slow down in the good air and then speed up again in the good air, so you're flying fast through the sink and slow in the lift, you get the equivalent advantage of having thermal for a certain amount of time. So basically now I'm just cloud hopping. I don't know where that other aircraft has gone. I think it out thermaled me and went another direction. And so we're going to try and go under and then kind of taste as many different clouds as possible to try and find the good thermals on my way out to the northeast. There you go, I didn't want to continue that turn.
Traffic glider Kilo Tango Charlie, joining downwind, runway 08 left, Vanilla.
That on the radio was unfortunately one of my mates that took a launch, and you could hear him say joining 08, he was going into land.
Nice.
So what I almost did earlier on in this flight does happen to the best of us, and that was a glider going and landing that had just taken a launch.
Vanilla traffic glider Kilo Tango Charlie, turning base, runway 08 left, Vanilla.
Hopping across to the next cloud, and on them the clouds we can see today are pretty much all cumulus clouds. They tend to be defined by a flat underside and a fluffy top, and they're really good indicators of where thermals can be. Generally a thermal will develop into a cumulus, or a cumulus develops on top of a thermal, however you want to think of it, and they're very good visual markers effectively for where the lifting air is. You can see we're going under the shade there. Everything gets a bit darker.
Tower traffic, park my car, Foxtrot, John, take runway 08 left, full stop, Tower.
So I'll position myself not just near the cloud, but where exactly by that cloud I think the lift is going to be, and make a turn. And whether it's luck, skill, or a bit of both, I've found myself in a pretty decent thermal. Again, the best one of the day so far, and hopefully they will be getting better and better as the day.
Interestingly, this thermal is not actually under the cloud, it's just upwind of the cloud to the north. And it's in the blue, there's no actual cloud above us. But the lift is in front of this cloud.
And there's a comment I made.
Good lift too.
We're not climbing directly in the middle or directly underneath the cloud, we're actually a little bit in front of it. That's where this thermal tends to be. And there's a few things that influence that. It really just depends on the day and the weather system as to where exactly the thermals are located. Now, there's many theories about whether their thermals are spaced out evenly in a grid or if they form kind of long streets. Everyone has their own ideas about it. I'm not sure which is right. They're probably all a little bit right. But I don't really care right now. I'm turning and going up, so things are good. Might be able to see the trees starting to look a little bit smaller now, so good feeling, getting a good climb, because you know you're going to be able to convert all this height into distance and have an adventure. This is going to be the first thermal of the day that'll also let us figure out how high the lift is going today, or at least within the next hour or two.
There's 4,000, that's nice.
Now the day's actually started, there'll be a certain height that the thermals will go to before they drop off in strength. It tends to be called the inversion level. And we'll get to see what height that's at the top of this one.
And now that cloud we were climbing just in front of is kind of disintegrating.
That's to note as well, the cycling of the clouds. They don't just stay static in the same position and same shape for the whole day. They'll cycle and disperse and then form. Anyway, the strength dropped off there a bit at almost 4,000 feet above ground. So we decided to leave that thermal. Got lots of options. We've got quite a while before we're going to need another strong one like that. So we can do a good cruise here and cover some distance. And now having that extra water on board really coming into play. We're doing 75 to 80 knots and not going down too quickly.
Copy. You got that?
I have no balance, thanks for that.
No worries.
You can see I was going on track and I saw there wasn't many thermals many clouds in front, so I've deviated off track a little bit now.
A little bit of a whistle somewhere in the aircraft.
To these other clouds here. We can roughly go. I mean, and it depends on the aircraft and how fast you're flying, but a general rule of thumb is about a kilometre every 100 feet. So every 1,000 feet we can go about 10k. So from just about 4,000 above ground, I've got about 40 kilometres that I can cover before I need a thermal. There's obviously a few other things we take into account, like
Another
we
nice
don't
cumulus in front. We'll take that one. And another few in front of that.
we don't just take a thermal and go
Couple
all
of
the way
fires going on.
all the way those 40 kilometres and then just land straight ahead at that 100 feet. There's obviously safety margins, and you can be in good air along that glide, so it can sometimes be further. If you want to fly faster, you'll cover less distance but quickly, or more and longer. So it's one of the trade-offs that we have to decide to make. But yeah, as I commented, coming under a nice one here, and there's a little fire off there at about 10 o'clock, and that will be a feature of today's flying. There's quite a lot of those burn-off fires, as I was explaining earlier. Again, we're right under the cloud now, and there's a little bit of lift around. But not a huge amount. On the northern side under that cloud there seemed to be a little bit, so I made a turn there. There does seem to be a good gust here and there, but it's not as steady as that last thermal we were under. So I'm gonna continue on, try and find something better. Don't need to hang around when we're at 4,000 feet.
Yeah, nothing under that.
Go ahead, John.
Can hear a few others on the radio having a chat there, and you can see now I'm actually changing my frequency to 119.1, which is the Wangaratta CTAF as it's called, local area frequency, because I can see on my moving map I'm pretty close to being inside their the radius.
Whiskey Uniform Sierra is 10 miles to the west, 3,500 tracking to the north. Traffic to Wangaratta.
So that was a transmission on that frequency. Let them know where I was, what altitude I was, what my intentions are, and what I am. So I'm a glider. Whiskey Uniform Sierra is my registration. I was 10 miles to the west, 3,500 and tracking north. So any other aircraft in the area can use that information to figure out if there's any danger that we could come quite close to each other.
Range here, the Warby ranges can be quite good, so we'll go up along it, try and find some lift.
And it just gives you peace of mind knowing where everyone else is. Yeah, as I talked about there, this is the Warby range in the front and just to the right a little bit. It's not too high, it's probably only 1,500 feet. But it's a little range that tends to have some good lift. It's quite forested, as you can see. It's also quite wide. You don't want to try and cross that whole distance when you don't have
I see a glider over here.
plenty of altitude. And there you go, I saw another glider. And I think he's under this cloud in front here. so definitely want to get over to him. Thought I found something there.
Oh, what? Who's making all that noise?
As I say, Very making a lot of noise and didn't actually give me anything when I turned, so like forget it. I don't want to struggle around looking for this. I know there's a thermal over there because I can see the other glider, I can see they're climbing. Let's just get to the next thermal. About 500 foot below the other aircraft, but I'm still going to join the thermal next to him in a way that is not going to cause any conflict and that keeps, or I keep a visual on him and he can have visual on me. So we'll try and both be turning opposite to each other in that circle. That way we can see each other. As you can see, it was worth coming to this thermal. It's a good one, climbing decently, and you can see quite easily there a lot of smoke from the fire there that's risen up, and I think the smoke's hit the inversion as well, and it's not really climbing much higher than that. There's different layers in an AMS, at which point the wind changes direction, and you've got different temperatures and which direction the temperature is heading towards. It can be going from cold to hot as you climb, or vice versa. Not an insane thermal here, but one worth getting to. I'm also finding it a little bit hard to thermal visually close to this other aircraft because the other aircraft is a heavy 18 metre ship and I am by comparison a little light 15 metre, so we tend to thermal a little bit different based on size. The longer wing people and the heavier ones don't tend to climb as easily as something that's lighter and smaller. They have far better glide range, and this ASG 29 that I'm thermaling next to, which I'll realise in a minute is Whiskey Sierra, as its rego, is about 55 to 1 best glide ratio, whereas I do about 39 to 40. So it goes quite a bit further. Anyway, I was thermaling for a bit with that guy.
I'll follow the other glider.
He's left the thermal, now I've left, and I'm gonna try and stay behind the higher performing glider and better performing pilot actually. Peter's a much better pilot. And I'll be able to learn maybe a couple things seeing how he flies, and even just you have more chances of finding thermal if you both get low if you're near another aircraft, because you can try out more area in the sky. You can see this has been a nice cruise here for the last few seconds. See the needles on 0 or even a little bit above at times. That's really nice when you can have long cruises in pretty much not going down. That's just free distance. It's awesome. Now we're back into still air.
Traffic light, Whiskey Uniform Sierra is 3,100, 10 miles to the west, tracking to the east of Calpan.
There was someone on the radio, so I made a call as well. I don't have the same type of navigation system that a powered Cessna or other aircraft might have, so my distances are based on my map and what my computer can tell me, so they don't tend to be exact, but I know my exact intentions and exact altitude at least. That was roughly 10 miles to the west there rather than exactly 10 miles. So we're almost on top of the Warby Ranges now. back down to 3,000 feet. A little bit below actually. But we've covered good distance. There's a few queues over the range, so we can test out a few of those, see how we go. I don't want to go too deep into the ranges towards any of these clouds if I know I can't make it back out. But I can also see that fire just on the nose there. And I'm thinking about that, wondering about how much heat there might be there and how much hot air might be arising therefore around that fire. Not having too much luck to center this thermal. There is a strong part though. See the little movements I'm putting into the control column with my hand. A little bit erratic. Something I'm trying to work on. See, maybe I should be moving that around a little smoother rather than jittering it around so fast. Probably better for the performance, flying a bit smoother. Nothing too much under that one. Bit of a waste of time again. Didn't climb too much. Spent a bunch of time. So wasn't the best use of the day. So crack it on forward. 80 knots again to the next cloud. And I'm actually not just using the Aero when it comes to do I decide to turn or not. You can feel through the seat of your pants, as it's called, flying.
That's the worst turn.
There you go. I can tell I'm not doing too well. Those are some poor turns. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, as the term goes. You can feel the acceleration in your body, and you can use that to determine what the air is doing, like right that very second, whereas the Vario tends to have 3, 4, 5 second lag behind it, depending on aircraft, and that's a little bit harder to use when you're trying to correct your thermaling, but if you use the feeling you can get in the seat of your pants, it's a little bit easier to center. And even in the cruise you can feel as to what the air's doing right that second. Still not the strongest lift, but a little more consistent in these turns, and not as bad. We're still hovering around 3,000 feet. That altimeter isn't moving much, and the clock is ticking. someone coming on the radio there with a bit of noise. Okay, so with 3,000 feet I wasn't super comfortable to go over the Warby Ranges because above ground I'm only 2,500, adding on the height of the Warby Ranges, and would have not been too comfortable crossing it. So I've decided to detour quite far to the west of my track to find this nice cloud that's out in the open rather than over unlandable terrain. If at all possible, it's good to stay where it's landable. See all these great big paddocks below are very easy to land a glider in. You can see some of the dark ones around. Those are paddocks that have already been burned.
I'm going over here towards this burn off because I'm not getting anything.
And there's a decision I made to turn to the west rather than to that cloud to go explore the lift around this fire. I can see, and you might be able to see as well.
Kind of in the wrong direction, but should get some good lift off of it.
On the ground there's the actual fire front, which is lit by the farmer and completely controlled and done legally. And as I was saying before, just to get rid of the old crop. I think it's debatable whether it actually helps the nutrients get back into the soil, but I don't know, I'm not a farmer. But I do know that I can fly over to this and still get very far away if I don't find any lift. I've also got to consider a few other things, like any other gliders that might decide to fly nearby this area. So I'll make a radio call pretty soon, letting them know where I am. You can see easily the fire down there on the right. And also smoke. Don't want to breathe in too much of it, and you don't want to be flying where you don't have as good a visibility as you can have. But there might be a really good lift, so it's worth the try. I've also got to figure out where that lift is around this fire. Isn't always the smoke.
There it is.
There goes the Vario off the top. A little turbulent. It's not a smooth lift, but it's good fun. This is quite a small fire as well, so there's no risk of overstressing the aircraft. We would never go over a really big fire or big bushfire. That's just not safe. But these little ones that are being burnt off by farmers controlled, and when the smoke isn't that thick either, you can go a little bit near it like we are now and get some great climbs. Another reason you wouldn't want to go near big fires is where there might be firefighting aircraft. So this is all done with lots of consideration. I'm still working out how to center this thing, and it might be that it's impossible to center because it's just kind of bubbling heat that's coming up. I think the camera also makes the smoke. I think this also makes the smoke a little bit worse than it actually was. I had very good visibility. It looks a little worse on screen. So I'm back on the other frequency.
On Sierra station. I'm just thermaling by the fire, halfway to Yarrawonga.
Acknowledge, I have it off my nose. I'm just under the Q towards Floyd. To your southwest, southeast, correction.
I'm 3,200.
Acknowledge, I'm at 4,000.
So this is the glider chat frequency that I'm on now, because I'm not within any of the ranges of the airfields Wangaratta and Penella as I was previously. So this is pretty much only used for gliders to communicate with between each other, because we'll be the biggest safety concern to our mates, you know, where all the other gliders are. So I let them know where I was at the fire between Benalla and Yarrawonga. Gave them altitude, I think, as well. So anyone else that's also listening on the glider channel isn't going to come and join me by this fire completely unannounced. I guess it doesn't really matter much if we're not centered. If the gusts are this strong though. So needle's moving between 0 and 10, but it's staying around 10 enough that the average is probably about 5 knots, which is,
That's the one.
if I didn't mention it, the scale of the vario. It's in knots, so you can roughly convert it to hundreds of feet per second, or if you divide the number by 2, you'll get just about meters a second. So 10 knots, 5 meters a second, 5 knots, 2.5 meters a second. That would be going up. The average of the climb that I've had by this fire is probably 2.5 to 3 meters per second, which is relatively nice, especially since someone taking a little while on the radio there. 2.5 to 3 meters a second is a pretty good climb rate, considering we're late in the season. There's not many people flying this late in the season as it moves through to autumn. So pretty good climbs, all things considered. So we're back to 4,000 above ground, 4.5 indicated roughly, and we're actually getting up close near to the clouds, which you don't want to fly too close to or into, definitely not. So we're going to leave this strong thermal and go on a big cruise, using all this nice height to hopefully get to another big climb. Last turn. Yeah, that looks quite bad on camera, but actually wasn't that bad visibility. Yep, 4,600 on the clock, and off we go. Back on track, you can see the fire down below. They've actually stopped burning, and it's just the smoke that's rising. So we reached that climb at really the perfect time. You wouldn't want to have been there 5 minutes earlier or later, because you wouldn't have been there when the heat was rising, or you would have been there after the heat had risen and it was just smoke. Anyway, you can see me being quite aggressive there with the cruising speed. It's 95 knots, 180k an hour.
Oh, good.
I'm like, woohoo, I'm so high, let's push the stick forward, let's go crazy. And you can see I've got the flap setting, that white handle, in negative. So we're going fast. Ripping past those clouds. And that's the northern tip of the Warby Ranges here, where it changes to this square, or rectangular rather, bunch of trees. So we're going to cross over that and get closer to our first turn point. I was perhaps cruising a little fast because you can see now I've used about 800 feet when I was travelling at 90 knots, and probably haven't gone as far as I could have with that height. It might have been a little better to do 80 knots, go a little bit further for the same height. Of course you don't want to bring it back to your best cruising speed, which for this aircraft with the water on is about 58-60 knots, because you're moving so slowly that sure you would cover more distance in total, but it would take you so long to cover it that you would run out of daytime, or daytime or good weather. So you want to try and fly quite a bit faster than your best glide on a good cross-country day. If you're just trying to stay up, then of course, yeah, bring your speed back. Maybe it doesn't look like it to power pilots, but this is a very comfortable distance to cover over unlandable terrain. It's probably about 10-15k on the nose there, to get over this big, I think it's a plantation of trees, plantation or just forest that was never cut down. I'll easily get over this section. My glide ratio will take me from here pretty much to where the smoke in the distance is. You can see where it gets quite hazy. I can almost get to there on the horizon from the height that I'm at. So sometimes it's a bit astounding how far we can go in these things. See, I've pegged the speed back a little bit now. We're only doing 80 to 85 now, not 90, 95, which means we're not sinking so fast and also travelling a little further. And there we are, basically over that section of trees with still tons and tons of height. Little weak thermal there, probably not worth staying in. Back into the cruise. It's pretty easy to tell when I'm going to go back into the cruise because I'll pick up the speed, put the flaps into 0 at least. Straighten up.
Approaching the smoke north of Suna from the south.
That was Mike X-Ray, another glider, saying his position. He's back at that fire that I climbed at by Thuna, which was the town name. You can see it on the nose, that fire there. That was the one we were at not too long ago. I guess I'm thinking back to that fire about now, saying, gee, I wish there was another one in front of me here. Be great to get another climb like that.
Uniform Sarah at the Shelter 3100.
That radio calls my position just to let the other gliders know we're still on the glider frequency. So I'm at Pachelba, which is the town name, and it's quite easy to tell where Pachelba is for local pilots since there's a feedlot there for must be pigs. It's quite large, easy to find, and you can even get some thermals on there because there's some hot air that sometimes come out of it, that comes out of a feedlot. Well, out of the animals that live in the feedlot. It's a bit stinky, even this high up you can smell it. That's it on the nose there. And that's what I'm thinking now, maybe there'll be some hot air over there today for me. Seems decent. I'm almost directly over the feedlot now. Kind of wishing it was a bit stronger than it is though. Still, this thermal is better than most of the other ones that I've found under the clouds so far today, so it's worth taking if there's no fire nearby that I can hop onto. There is a fire just coming up on the nose just about now, there it is. But that one's so far off track that it's not worth going to. It's too far out my way.
All over the place, aren't they? Yeah, not very consistent. I've got about 2.5 over here.
I think the smoke's blocking a bit of sun.
And that's me just thinking generally about the day and what's been happening. I'm wondering that if there's so much smoke in the air, we're blocking out the sun a bit, and with less sun on the ground you get less heating, less thermals, well, worse glider weather. So we've only gained about 500 feet, and it's been quite a while in this thermal. It's not been one of the nicer ones of the day. Go on, Ryan, get out of there. There we go. Back into zero, back into a cruise. I'm within range of another cloud. You can see on the nose there just. And so we're going to try some other air. I know it's got to be getting better now as the sun's higher in the sky and everything's getting warmer. I think by now it's about 1 o'clock. So definitely worth keeping on pushing. Still have some options at 3,500. Playing around with my flight computer there, changing a few variables to try and make it give me more accurate information on the glide and the rest of the day. Just decreasing my estimated thermal strength value on there, which is called McCready. Again, not the best turns there. Pretty weak. Seems to be just weak lift everywhere under this cloud and no strong lift anywhere, in which case there's not much point thermaling. Let's just go to the next one. It's my flight computer telling me I'm nearing another CTAF, another area where I need to change frequency. This will be the Corowa frequency, so change that now. Having been up at a little bit above 4,000 feet earlier in the day. When you get lower later on, it's not a good feeling. You want to try and stay up high where that good lift was. You kind of kick yourself mentally, saying, how'd you let yourself get into this situation where you're low again? And why are you doing all these turns in sync? That's what I tell my students, don't turn in the sync. And I'm doing it here.
Traffic light of Whiskey Uniform Road, 10 miles to the southwest, 3,400, tracking to the northeast for traffic roller.
There's my position and intention call again. A lot slower now, you can see I'm cruising along at 60, even 65. So don't want to get too much lower than what I currently am. Weaving around the sky, trying to find this blast thermal. The issue partly is as well that some of the Varios don't compensate for the natural lifting and sinking that you get from pointing the nose up or pointing the nose down. So sometimes you're not always getting reliable information from that Vario. So you kind of take it with a grain of salt, any kind of reading that it's giving you. I didn't quite see it on the recording here, but there was
nice one.
Another glider.
Saw a glider on top of it.
There you go. Saw another glider, went over to them, and they had a nice thermal for me. And actually this glider was the same one we were thermaling with a little earlier on, before the fire. It's Whiskey Sierra again, which I'm kind of happy about seeing because that's the high performance glider. They should be way ahead of me, and the better performing pilot. Really awesome feeling, thermaling away in a strong thermal from low down. Still trying to centre it even though it's strong. It's a good idea to always be a little bit less than satisfied than the thermal you're in, because it might be 5 knots or 6 knots, but maybe there's 8 or 9 in there. If you just keep trying to centre, you might find that. needles basically on the stops there. Might be able to see the other glider there just high up above me every now and again on the video, because again, as we're the lighter, smaller glider, we're climbing a bit faster than the other.
Oh, awesome.
There goes the other glider. That little razor blade you might be able to see on the right. Just gone now. But I think it's worth doing another turn in here because it's just so strong. One turn in here is worth 10 turns in a weak one.
Mechanical's got a problem.
Yeah, that mechanical barrier, like I was saying, not to look at it. Look at it now, it's stuck on 10, even though the electrical, the one on the right's going up and down. And I know I'm not going up at 10 all the time, so it's just got a little stuck there. And out we go, 5,200 on the clock. There you go, I gave it a bit of a tap. Gave it a bit of a tap and it's working again. But yeah, exited that cloud to the north again, towards my turn point, kind of northeast actually. And I'm watching out for that, where that other glider is that just left the thermal not too long ago, because it looked like Whiskey Sierra was going the same direction as us. On the nose again, circling. A bit hard to see when they're pointed directly towards you or pointed directly away, but when they're side on,
Nice, pretty cumulus.
you can make them out.
Now the glider's there, thermaling up, that's good.
And again, I've seen that glider's actually continued on, he hasn't stayed in that thermal. And I think instead of gaining any more height in that thermal, because I'm already near cloud base, it's better to just stay by the other glider. So they're out at 2 o'clock there, you should be able to see them.
Actual 8 o'clock was
And I'm just letting him know on the radio as well exactly where I am, because at the moment I can see him, but there'd be no way for him to see me because I'm that far behind him. Anyway, kind of coming up on his 9 o'clock on his left now. You can see that on the anti-collision system as well, the FLARM as it's called. Very nice cruise here with some good lift, gaining height and going forward, even better than just going forward and not losing it. Not sure the decision making, but pretty soon here Whiskey Sierra is going to turn out to the left. He's left and
Sierra is 1 mile to the southeast of the field, 4,500 tracking to the northeast of
Whiskey Sierra is going to cross over to the left hand side of my aircraft and his, whereas my turn point is kind of the direction that I'm going now, so I'm going to have to cut across him, and he's going to go in front of my nose. So I just move to the left to see a little bit what he's doing, let him know where I am, but he's really turning quite far to the left here. I don't know if he was going towards a cloud or what, but
There's the other glider.
that's where I'll make a turn out to go the direction I wanted to go and leave him be. It is nice to fly together, but if you've got different tasks, different directions you want to go, then just do your task. Here I go, trying to fiddle with the camera to try and put it on the other glider as we're flying near each other.
There's the other glider there, can you see it?
It's a bit hard to see there, below and in front of the wing.
There's so many bugs on my wing.
And then yeah, indeed, there's a lot of bugs around at the moment. A lot of them have suicided into the leading edge there. Excuse my fingers.
Good.
Don't think I lined it exactly back up to where it was before either, but it's alright. That's Corowa Airfield down on the left, the place I was giving my call to. Probably 2 miles or 3 miles rather than 1, but anyway. Very big, flat, towering cumulus in front, so hopefully that one will give us something juicy. Oh, juicy thermal. Just about under this big cloud now. Again, thinking about where the thermal in relation to the cloud is going to be. And I can use the ones that I've taken earlier in the day and guesstimate where the next one is going to be. Previously, the thermals have been to the northern side of the cloud, which also happens to be the upwind side. So that's the direction that I'm going to of this cloud in search of that thermal. Good peak there, but dropped off again. Let's try and centre that. Stronger over this way, so we'll straighten up a little bit. And then tighten up where it's stronger. Though I can't seem to find that gust that I had before. But it'd still be decent. Big fire on the nose. There's another 2 there actually that have just started off. So there's quite a few burn-offs going. It was a good day for them. There was next to no wind on the ground, which is exactly the time that you want to do your burn-off. Another one in the distance there on the nose. cruise. 4,500, and that's plenty of height to get to the next clouds in the distance. I'm trying to plan my route to the turn point, which is a little beyond the fire you can see there at 1 o'clock. So I'm thinking, well, I can go to this cloud directly in front, and then the other cloud behind that, or the one just to the right. Still fiddling around with my flight computer. Back onto the gliding frequency as I'm away from Korowa. And there are other frequencies we have to monitor dependent upon what heights we're at. And where we are, but when we're just out travelling between areas,
I can't see how to change on my device the time. It's 1 hour ahead. We've just gone back to standard time.
Oh, that's what I got wrong. Yeah, what does that say? 3:15 in the afternoon, or is it actually 2:15? Anyway, not something that I should be adjusting in flight. But I'm just on a nice cruise. Yeah, the biggest threat to me gliding between these locales where there's CTAFs are other gliders, which is why I change onto the glider chat channel. If I had a radio in this aircraft that could dual monitor and listen to multiple frequencies, then I would do that as well.
I have to add a percent or two of bug.
Adding a bug percentage there onto the device as well, noting how many bugs there are on my wing. Obviously well, maybe not obviously, they degrade the performance by not allowing laminar flow of the wing to happen.
See if I can get something. If I don't get anything in 200 feet, I'll kick her over. Hey, John.
I'm very tempted to say something on the radio there, because that's a mate of mine that's down very low to where the point that he would have to start his engine. He's not in a typical glider like I'm in, he's in a motor glider, and it's getting low having to start his engine. So we always like to tease glider pilots that also have an engine. It's kind of cheating, I think. Decent climb under the cloud here. I think it's the best climb we've had under a cloud all day. It's quite green around here. We've just crossed the Murray River, which is divided between two states of Australia, New South Wales and Victoria. Because of that, it's quite irrigated. The farmers use a lot of the water that's in that river to water their crops, and hence the ground tends to be a lot more green, as you can see, which can sometimes and sometimes not help with the gliding weather. It really changes the heat capacity of the ground, which, yeah, complicated things happen, and complicated maths that I don't quite understand. That change how the weather is in that locale. And that's definitely where I am now. It's quite green. There's the other glider joining me. and I'm very happy because I'm now above that high performance glider.
There's the other glider down on the left. Can you see that? There you go.
That's a really nice feeling.
Kilo Whiskey, Uniform Sierra, have you crossed the river yet?
I didn't get much out of that transmission, as you can hear.
Yeah, Fox Sierra, Fox Alpha, where are you?
I'm 10 miles northeast of Chloride Thermaling with Whiskey Sierra.
Trying to talk to Kilo Whiskey, which is a Mosquito. Oh no, a Mosquito aircraft, that is. But I couldn't get through to him, and then someone else thought I was talking to them, and madness on the radio.
10 miles northeast.
Correct. 5,000.
Okay, I'll head over your way.
That was Foxtrot Alpha, another ASG 29, similar to the one I'm thermaling with now. Wondering where we are because we're quite ahead of the rest of the pack. There's a collision warning. I don't think it was quite on the money there. We were still quite away from each other, but now you know what it sounds like. $5,100, back into the cruise. Quite a large gap really between here and the next cloud that I want to take, so glad to have taken a good amount of height out of that thermal. Just kind of fiddling there with the flap lever, a little way between the 0 and negative setting there, because there is, I guess, a perfect flap setting for whatever speed you're doing. It's not exactly at the indents that are indicated on the glider, but we tend to do it roughly, and that's good enough. Definitely not something that's required though.
November Zulu, here goes it, John.
Yeah, I've got a level after 3-3, then it stopped, so I'm looking for another one at the moment.
Roger, I just climbed the 5,000 and just over the Warby where the road comes up from Moona.
Yeah, I'm off the edge of the forest, the southwest corner of the forest on the north of the Warby.
You can hear there, the others are still by the Warby Ranges there, so we're a little bit out in front today. These cumulus are looking very well defined up in front, which tends to indicate they're more reliable when it comes to finding lift under. So Day's definitely going at full speed. was high enough there, and the lift wasn't super strong, so I just slowed down a little bit there in the lift. I'm thinking again that the strong lift's going to be on the northern side of this cloud, which I'm approaching now. Doesn't look like it though, so we'll continue off to the left and try a few more clouds along the way to our first turn point. We're about 30 to 40k out from that point, and you can see there's a fire just starting at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock there, and I've got that in mind now. I can see that it's just starting, the smoke's just coming up, it's only just been lit, so it might be really going quite strong by the time we're there roughly, and that could be really nice climb again. So I'm keeping that one in mind. That was quite a strong push, so I slowed down quite quickly there. But I was close enough to it to turn right into the centre there, so we'll just keep going. It may look like we're lower than we are, because the clouds are double the height we are at, but we're still a good amount above ground. There's a lot less of those blackened, burnt paddocks out this side of southeastern New South Wales. It tends to be a bit greener, and for whatever reason not as many farmers do burn-offs over here. But you're still getting a good temperature gradient on the ground just based on the colour of the paddocks. The darker paddocks tend to warm quicker than the lighter coloured ones. So just looking down and around, I'll be looking over these, the darker grey and yellowish paddocks rather than the green ones when I'm looking for lift. They're going to be the ones that are warm quicker and attract more heat. Just in the last minute, that fire off at 2 o'clock started to get going. You can see the smoke well and truly rising,
Fire over there.
albeit not too high.
Might go to that one.
Just a little bit out of those few turns there, wasn't too promising. So we're kind of changing gears now because of the height that we're at. We're no longer in the top section of lift up near the cloud base. We're a little below half of the way up. So we're going to slow down our cruise a bit there, as you can see, and 75. We're going to accept weaker thermals as we're lower down, because you don't want to be so low down that you have to take any thermal no matter the strength, because you might be then having to take a really weak one for a long time. You can see the fire ahead. Smoke's coming up quite quickly. However, it seems to have plateaued off at a height that's actually a little bit below what I am. So this doesn't look too promising for lift. And actually this experience with this fire will be a really good example of what is probably the wrong approach to trying to get some lift out of a burn off like this. There was nothing around, and I was just waiting and waiting for the smoke to rise a bit more and have the lift travelling a bit higher, but it just didn't happen, as you'll see. Could be a little bit earlier to this location than I should be if I wanted to make use of this. It's also quite thick low down that smoke, so we don't want to go low near that smoke there. You can hardly see through it. That's never a good sign. Just flying around the top of it is not really much lift there. Little gust. We've been going down for the last 30 seconds near this. Just because I had a good one before doesn't mean I'm going to have another good one by the burn off, so I should really be pushing on. But hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Another gliders, Gliding Killer Whiskey is overhead Corowa at 4100, tracking Bulldale.
It's another glider back at Corowa. And really all that's happening here is I'm losing altitude and gaining height back to where I would have been 30 seconds ago in the lift that is there. So I'm not actually making a total gain, I'm just going up and down in the same portion of air. I'm not actually having a total increase in energy. Hoping that this is suddenly just going to kick off and bubble away up high, but it's not. It's just a big waste of time, this whole experience by this fire. cringe at my decision making here, waiting around so long by this one. I'm just so determined to get another crazy climb like before that I'm forgetting about, you know, the actual task, which is covering some distance. And all those pretty cumulus clouds around, which will all have some lift around them, and yet I'm sitting here by the smoke.
Oh, come on.
Getting a little bit upset there, as you can hear. Right, you're gonna leave. Just realised now it's been a waste of time. Still 3,300 feet. Yeah. Let's try and learn from that experience and not do that in the next one. And I think I do. Then the rest of this flight, at least, I won't spend too much time around areas that aren't working. A few other little fires starting in front of me, so they might be going in 10-15. We might get some good climbs out of them, but I've got to do a bit of route planning now as well. My original task, which was about 340 kilometers, it's now 2:45, the clock says there, so I'm running out of time to complete it. So I'm going to have to cut my first turn point short to still be able to make it back to the airfield. You don't want to run out of day and suddenly be gliding along in still air and nothing's happening and you just basically glide into a paddock. You kind of have to gauge how fast you think you can fly and how much distance you can personally cover in the aircraft you're in, and the weather how it is on these free distance flights. Looking back at that fire I was by now, you can see it looks exactly like the one that we were by before when we got that insane climb. We were just another 2 or 3 minutes there. And we might have been in something really, really strong, but I did leave and should have left even earlier. Again, that's a lot of time I just spent climbing relatively slowly to 3,300 again. I really need one good climb to get back up to the height of the clouds and start racing. It's another way to think of the changing gears in your head mentally. Is, are you racing? Are you conserving height? Or are you just trying to stay up in the sky? And you could have a few more different speeds depending on weather and time of day, but roughly that's the idea. Are we trying to fly as far as possible right now, or are we just trying to stay up, even if you just simplified to those two? That's the most basic decision you can make. lift, you'll find as well, for any given thermal that goes from the ground all the way up to the top of lift, will not have the same strength the whole way up. It tends to be a little weaker down low, and then in the middle portion it'll be the strongest, and then it weakens off again at the top. So you're always trying to be entering that thermal at the strong part and leaving before it gets weak again at the top, or not being in a position where you're joining the thermal weak and having to wait for it to get strong. But if you're just trying to stay airborne, then yeah, join that weak thermal and stay up. You won't cover any distance if you're on the ground. So just through 2,500 above ground there, you can make out the buildings down on the right pretty easily. Trees are looking substantially bigger. It's time to change gear again, slow down, and accept a weaker climb. Or try and be a little bit lucky like I am now and get a decently strong thermal from down lower. Also fiddling with my phone a little bit, trying to work out where the other gliders are in relation to me, wondering where Delta Whiskey is, sorry, Whiskey Sierra is, that G29 we were with earlier, because if he's nearby and under a really strong thermal and high up, then I'll leave this one and try and head over to where he is. I'm actually just using the app flight radar for that. Just need to stay with this one, give myself some more options a little bit later on when I'm a bit higher. I do have a thermal averaging system on my navigation device on the side there, so it'll give me the last 60 seconds or last 30 seconds, whichever I wish, of thermal strength. So I can tell if my last minute's been a good climb or not, if it's not obvious. But that was another 500 feet I got there, which will take me across to this next set of clouds. We're still not back and cruising above 80 knots yet, still relatively slow. Didn't turn out to be the easiest day to centre a thermal. They seemed quite a bit gusty in general. There can be trends of the day. Some days you can get lots of weak ones, not many strong ones, or you can get lots of strong. And that's kind of one of the beauties of the sport, is every day is different because there's an infinite number of ways the weather can really be. No 2 days are the same.
1-1, are you planning on going out to the west of this road?
Planning on going into where?
Somewhere out to the west, make a bit of a triangle?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm heading west until I've got to turn left.
Roger that, I got 5 sticks off the fire.
And what those two are thinking of doing is what I'm thinking of doing as well, cutting my first turn point a bit short, but still travelling out to the west to make a smaller triangle on my track rather than a really big one. So we'll see myself make that decision in a little bit. You can tell we're not in that low section of the thermal anymore where the lift is weak. It seems quite a bit stronger up here on average. So we're climbing through 4-5 now. And a good portion of that circle is 5 knots or more.
Got it?
Hey, where are you guys now?
We're up near Jittering.
I think it's Sierra Sub-Alpha. Where are you at, sir? Where are you?
We just been to Buffalo, now we're Jittering, heading back towards Feather Top.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Pretty smoky here.
Yeah, it's smoky out here too.
There's a lot of fires lit in New South Wales. It's going to get smokier.
So there's a little bit of a discussion there. We can hear quite a far range of gliders.
Uniform Sierra Kilo Whiskey, what's your position?
I'm thermaling at Warbundry 5000.
Acknowledged, I'm for the run to Balldale, 4,200 climbing.
Yeah, quite a bit of chatter there. The glider we could hear earlier on talking, flying around Buffalo, was the place they named. It's about 200k south of where we are, give or take a little bit, not sure exactly, but they were talking about the smoke they're getting by the hills, and I let them know that there's even more fires being lit to the north of them, so it's going to get even more smoky for them. So just sharing information. That fire earlier on is just on the nose there, really going off now. There's really a lot of smoke there. And there's another glider below me there. Did anyone see that? Whiskey Sierra's caught up with me and is lower. So we did pretty well, all things considering, out on our own flying today, even with all that time wasted as well by the fire. Really nice line of lift here. Along that side of the cloud. definitely racing again, but I've pegged my speed back a bit because I don't want to get back in one of those low situations again. I'm also looking out to my left, which is southwest, thinking about, well, if I do turn and go towards my second turn point, what's the lift like going to be along the way? If I can turn to my second turn point with a good line of clouds, say, kind of streeting towards that second turn point, then my speed along that leg will be a lot faster. So I'm thinking about, well, if I turn now, I'll be going through the blue for quite a while, versus if I wait another 10 kilometers this way to the north and then turn west, I'll more likely have a much faster speed across the ground. It's also looking at the fires, which ones are just starting off. There's that one at about 10 o'clock there, and if I can also line up my track to that second turn point with the fires, I could get some good climbs off them as well. There's Kilo Whiskey, that's even a little while behind me, already making that turn out west. So I'm thinking, well, if others are making that turn and I'm further out, I should really make that turn quite soon, because I'm going to have more distance to travel. I'm wondering, wait a minute, he's turning Baldale, where exactly is that in relation to me? And I look at my map and it's, probably should have looked at the paper one rather than my phone, but it's a good 30 to 40k to my west, or rather southwest. So he's really turned quite early, so maybe he has access to some information that I don't know of. Maybe the day looks like it's weakening, but either way, use the decisions of those around you to inform you better. Don't just go out on your own unless you really are quite confident in your predictions. Again, another kind of failed thermal entry there. Turning, it's getting better and better, and then it's not good. Oh well, let's keep going. And you save a lot more time and therefore make a lot more distance if you make that decision to leave that less than satisfactory thermal earlier. So I just did a kind of 20-degree turn to the right and then one back to the left on track again. Whereas if I'd done a full circle there, I probably would have been circling in sync, losing height and losing time.
15k short of Copan for rain.
And there's the decision, 15k short of my turn point, turning to Rennie the second one, and look at that, there's those two fires along the way basically, as well as a few clouds lined up. So I've made plus. That was a guy another 200k north of where I am via fire traffic power aircraft that knows of the glider frequency and has jumped on it and said, is any gliders nearby? Anyone near Griffith? And just like we've heard there, there's no gliders around Griffith. So either someone's not talking or he's lucky he doesn't have to watch out for anyone at the moment. But there are a few clubs up north near Griffith. There's one in Temora, there's Leeton as well. So that area, a few 100k north of here, is, I mean, it's good gliding weather generally, and there's a few clubs there, so plenty of gliders around. So we're travelling out to the west here. You can see the sun starting to lower a little bit in the horizon. It's not directly above. Can't quite make out the time on my nav computer at the moment. But there's these two nice fires that I'll be able to test out along my way to Rennie, which is the name of that second turn point out west.
More water.
I bring about 3 litres of water with me on most flights. If it's a really long one, I'll bring a bit more. I'll bring maybe muesli bars to eat, some fruit. And that's most of the sustenance I need to get through the flight. I'll have a big breakfast as well. The water's the really important one. You're sitting down, so sometimes people tend to forget, but you're in the sun, so you really need to keep your water intake up. I'm usually drinking a litre every couple of hours, which isn't too bad. Some people bring some Powerade or Gatorade, some electrolyte drink like that. That can be good as well to have a bit as well. But you also want just some normal water. Alright, so let's test out this first fire. Slow down. Prepare for the gusts and the bumps. Perhaps I turned a little early there. It's not quite centered. So we'll straighten up a little bit again here. Wait a little bit longer. And then make the turn. Still a little bit hard to center there, so I've actually pulled on another stage of flaps. You can see it gusting up to 10 knots there, which is pretty decent. A little bit hectic on the controls there as well. It's pushing me around. It's not lifting centrally in both wings equally. There might be a larger force of the air that's in the updraft pushing on one wing rather than the other, and that's going to roll the aircraft. So you're kind of fighting it a little bit there, but it's worth it. Really nice one here. Anytime you can see the altimeter needle wind up like that is a great thing. Going back to that 10 kilometers every 1,000 feet rule, roughly. Every time we gain 100 feet, it's like we've gone another kilometer. back up to 5,000 now, which is very comfortable. It's unclear whether the cloud that's over the top of this fire was formed by the fire or whether it's just a naturally occurring one. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's causing the formation of the cloud, but either way it's a good determiner of where the lift might be.
I'm going to mute that.
Yep, mute your phone if you're flying, no distractions, don't answer it, don't mess with it. Aviate first.
Oh, are we at the top? Maybe we are. Oh, goodness gracious.
The lift does seem to be weakening a bit there, so we're at that top part of the thermal I think now, where it does get weak. So time to leave. So my track is about 20 degrees to the right if I wanted to head straight for Rennie, that turn point. But I'm going to follow the line of clouds that goes straight ahead and then to the right to try and stay in the good air, so I'm not thermaling as much. There is a point where, I think I said it before, you don't want to deviate too far off track. But good rule of thumb is about 30 degrees. If you have to turn more than 30 degrees off track to get to significantly better air, then it's not worth it, and you're much better off just going straight to your turn point. Unless of course you're really desperate, you're in that lower gear just trying to stay airborne, then go wherever you got to go to find lift, even if it's back on track. And what that was glider 11 that we were hearing talk a few times this flight, actually saying he's changing back to vanilla CTAF, so he's not far out from just going and landing. So whether he's not enjoying himself or the weather's not so good where he was, he's decided to not continue his flight. It's something I keep in mind, and I go, ooh, should I be heading straight home now? Is it really that bad? But I think I decided not to doubt myself. I also like rubbing it in the pilot of 11's yeah, I won't elaborate on that. We compete a little bit. not a huge amount under those clouds that I decided to deviate by, but there's a few more up ahead, and I can see three fires on screen as well at the moment. There's plenty going on. Also trying to look in the distance at what the clouds are doing, not just the ones directly ahead. And as far as I can see out to the horizon, all the clouds look very well defined. They don't seem like they're disintegrating or anything like that. So another thing that's kind of making me stay on task and on track. Drinking water. Another reason that flying in this area is so nice in southern New South Wales and northern Victoria is all these paddocks that are around that are below or above, below and
really?
Around the horizon there
And that's
are all...
I'm going down at 8.
There you go, getting a bit annoyed there.
Is that lift?
That's happened to me a few times that day. All these paddocks are very large, kilometre or two in length, which gives me just so much space to land. And those dark grey ones are pretty much all
waste of
wheat.
Time, height, energy. That's not what you want to do when you come near a thermal.
There you go.
Not at all.
There's large paddocks, kilometre or so in size, or bigger. Very easy to land on, and because I know the crops generally grain, I know the farmer's taken out all the tree stumps, all of the big rocks and things that might damage his equipment that they've used on the farm to, harvest or sow. So they're in some cases better than the airfield that you take off from, these paddocks. So it's very comforting knowing that almost everywhere you go you'll be over or very close to a paddock that you can land in very safely. There's a few things that make our terrain a little different.
Just started a fire up ahead. We might get to it just as it goes off.
Like swirl lines, which is single wire earth return, which are these wires that can be 500 meters between posts, and they're just a single wire.
You can see that on the nose.
To deliver electricity long distance with very little cost. So there's a few things that are specific to these areas to watch out for as glider pilot, but by and large it's really heaven. There'll be houses spread out with someone if you need something. It's all landable terrain.
Wow, look at it go!
It's a good experience out in the Australian flatlands. And yep, there's another fire starting. As I pointed out there on the nose, the farmer's just going around.
That one's going to be massive, I know it.
On their vehicle.
It's like a third of the way through the paddock already.
Starting a line of fire. It's a little hard to see it on camera, but you might be able to see the line of fire there, and it's just going gangbusters at the moment.
Jeez.
So it's getting my hopes up.
I can see the heat bubble actually with the smoke and how it's going up.
Yeah, you can. I can see
just about straight for it.
the highest point that the smoke's reached, and if you can see that mass of air moving up, then you know the whole thing's moving up, and you're going to get good lift. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to give me something.
Almost there.
I'm anticipating it, hands on the flap lever, ready to start the climb.
There it is.
And this one's actually turns out to be just as strong as the others, but very, very narrow where the lift is exactly. Gets really strong there, 10 plus knots. And then if I'm not perfectly next to that, you can see it drops right off there. But 10 knots for half the time and 0 for the other half is still 5, which is still decent. You can really feel the acceleration like you're in a lift when you're in these type of thermals.
I'm still in control. Don't worry.
And yeah, there we are talking about the lift trying to push me around this guy a little bit.
I'm going to figure out where the centre
Kilo
is.
Whiskey is 10k west of Rennie at 4,100, turning for Manila.
Good on you, Tim.
Where are you?
40k east of Rennie.
Behind me.
And yeah, that's Kilo Whiskey talking. Made his turn point by Rennie and heading back to Benalla. So now pretty much all the other gliders that are around are heading back. There's just me and, as I find out later, one other aircraft that's out as far north as we are at this point. Should really work on the smoothness of my control inputs, not be slamming it around so much. I'm sure it would fly a bit smoother if I did. Half of this is just fighting with the aircraft though, as it's being pushed around. Might be able to just barely see the thermal assistant on my navigation device. That's a nice piece of tech that sometimes works and at the very least is a good aid, which tries to work out with GPS exactly where you've been in relation to the thermal and what
Find the centre of this thing.
and what side is the centre.
I'm at Narrated 4,300. Okay.
It'll try and predict.
I'm just getting back up on the bowl.
Try and predict for you the centre so you can more easily get into the strong lift. You can see the circles there on screen. Darker red for strong lift and lighter blue for the sink.
That's a more stable climb out this way.
Climb, a lot more stable now. Ripper.
Make X-ray uniforms here.
Good.
You make it to Rennie and head out east yet?
at Colcan at the moment, I've got away ways. Whereabouts are you?
I turn just west of Colcan, going back to Winnie.
That's Quebec X-Ray that you might remember from the start of the video that was launching. He unfortunately...
I'm also in an absolute stonker, as they say.
he had to actually take another launch. There was an issue with the tow plane, they hadn't aborted launch. So unfortunately that guy had to launch a lot later than he was intending, which means he's a little slower around the task than the rest of us. But he's still doing really well. He's doing pretty much the same task as me, but in the opposite direction. I went Colcan Rennie, he's doing Rennie Colcan, and we're pretty much at the same position, heading from east to west for each other. Always good to chat with your mates, check that they're not, too low over a paddock and you need to call home and get the trailer for them.
I don't want to go. Sorry, we don't want to go up into the clouds, so I think I'll just leave there. Nice as that thing was.
There's 6,100 there. So very nice climb, that one. It's going to give me good distance. That's hands off the controls there. Very smooth.
Really smooth. Oh, that's water while the aircraft flies itself.
You can see it just trying to turn itself to the right there a little bit.
It has just the smallest tendency to roll to the right in still air.
There you go, I said that. Just a little personality of the aircraft, I guess.
Go. That cloud looks nice and defined. There's a row along there. I think I'll take this one upwind a little bit.
That's another decision just made there. My turn point was basically between two cloud streets there, and I had to determine which one I'd like to go along. I looked at how defined the clouds are, as well as which side is upwind. Made a decision to go along the right line, so rather than the left. Getting a bit dark in the cockpit there. Bit of the shadow, I guess, of the sun. I think it's partly to do with my camera's exposure. It's not quite set right. It's set for looking outside at the terrain and things in the distance, rather than inside where it's a bit darker. Probably need to fiddle around with it a bit more. was a nice cruise. We've only just gone below 5,000 feet now from what was 6.1. I think we've probably done better than 10k off that 1,000 feet, which is good because we're also doing it at a good speed as well. Really interesting cloud formations ahead. There's a bunch of smaller cumulus, and then there's one really high towering cumulus directly in front, and I wonder what's causing that, whether it's a fire or just local features. But it's interesting how much variation there is in the sky. Intuition would think that there'd be good lift under that, because there's a lot of vertical development, hence a lot of upward movement. There you can see I'm just doing a little S-turn in the lift rather than completely slowing down and thermaling. Just picking up a bit of energy along the way. There's many different ways to get energy out of the atmosphere. You might be able to start to make out at 10 or 11 o'clock the smoke that's above the cloud base, and also blocking out the horizon a lot closer than it is over on the right. So there's something that looks like a really big fire going on just to the little bit to the left of the aircraft. And as it turns out, my turn point's in the middle of that, so we'll see what decision I make. In fact, you can see a few fires going on, 3 of them, just near where all that smoke is, and that might be contributing to it. As I said before, there's also not much wind across the ground and up high, so the smoke's staying fairly close to where it originated. It's not blowing away too quickly.
Bunch of fires up ahead. I can see about 11 from here, all around the horizon.
There you go. It's a bit hard to see on camera, but there's 11 fires that I can spot visually at that moment in the aircraft. Should be a lot easier to make out now, that smoke on the left hand side compared to the right. It's really quite thick. Down below 4,000. looking out to the north, cues look a little more sparse rather. And looking out beyond the smoke, back to the south towards Benalla, which is on the nose, there's quite a good number of them. So it doesn't look like whether that'll be on my track back to Benalla will be anything worse than what I've been in. It doesn't seem like the day's ending too early, so I can add that to my consideration about what to do given my turn point is in the middle of that smoke. Back to the smooth thermals of under clouds rather than over fires. A lot less bumpy. One thing I haven't seen much of today, which I usually would, are eagles. On a good thermaling day you tend to see quite a few of them around, circling, and you can use those for finding thermals as well. They tend to be in the strong part of the lift. They're almost thermaling every single day, so a little bit odd not seeing the eagles around. They could be there and I've just missed them. Could be to do with the smoke, I'm not sure. Looking at the flight computer, seeing how far ahead that turn point is, and if it really is inside that smoke, and it most definitely is. No ways about it. It's quite a large fire just off to the right of the nose there. Long line as well. That might have been where the original mass of smoke has come from, but it's hard to tell. So I'm on track for that turn point, and I basically say to myself, let's see what the lift is like by the smoke. Let's not go into anywhere where we're going to have poor visibility. So just kind of tiptoeing closer towards the smoke there. few turns there, not giving me too much, but there's some lift around by that smoke, so...
Uniform Sierra, quick X-ray.
Go ahead, quick X-ray.
What sort of climbs are you getting?
5 or 6 under the queue, some good ones under the fire though, over the fire.
Yeah, okay.
And you out east?
Yeah, similar. Just the last couple have just been a lot softer, that's all.
Yeah, it's probably a good hour left in the day at least.
Yeah, agreed. Victor Sierra, Alpha Romeo, 2052, where are you?
That's Quebec X-ray saying that his climbs are a little bit weaker than they were earlier on. And he's just wondering if I'm experiencing the same thing. And we both kind of say, yeah, there's probably about an hour left in the day. Starting to turn off. Sun's getting a bit lower in the horizon there. A little lower in the sky, rather. So we're both definitely thinking about turning for home now. As I just get closer and closer to this smoke, it looks like if I was in it, I wouldn't be able to see the ground, just based on how thick that smoke is.
Uniform Sierra is turning 10k east of Rennie back to Benalla. There's a lot of smoke out here.
Uniform Sierra, Killer Whiskey, you're up and good climbs south of Reading.
Can't see if there's any clouds south of Rennie.
There are. I found a 5-knot average about 10k south of Reading.
Thank you.
That was my mate kind of egging me on to just go a little bit closer to Rennie. He said he's 10k south and had some good climbs. But I don't have too much long distance vision. It's a bit hard to tell what's going on other than directly in front of me. So I'm about to make the decision to skedaddle away from this smoke and back into the clear air, where I can definitely see a lot easier where the climbs are going to be.
That's too much smoke for me. Screw it. I'm going back to these clouds here. Excuse my language.
If you contrast all that smoke,
I don't care if there's clouds on the other side, I'm not going to fly through it.
yeah, contrast all that smoke
Clear out this way.
to the clouds I can see up in front. That long line of clouds stretching from left to right, big street of them. There's not many pilots that would.
They're in a line as well, these clouds along here. That's better than any good climb that he's talking about.
Yeah, most pilots are going to go for the street of clouds rather than, go off what your mate says about there might be some lift to the south where you can't see because there's too much smoke. No, just go along the street. It's like a highway in the sky. I'll be able to run that most of the way back to Benalla. So I whacked it forward to just about 90 knots there, coming down through 4,000 again. Just get back to the street, climb back up to cloud base and just travel along that street the whole way back to Benalla. That's kind of the idea now. So we've gone as far east towards Calcan, and then we've gone as far west as we would towards Rennie. And we're cutting kind of back along our track east to get back along this cloud street, which is going to be a lot faster than going out in the blue directly back to Benalla. This is a worthwhile diversion.
back, I can kind of see behind the smoke now. There's no way it's better climbs out to the south of it, like Tim was saying. I think this is the line to go down.
Doubting what my mate said there. Now I can see back behind the smoke a little bit. There's that street of clouds all towards the south.
Everything's gone orange. Wow, look out that way. Look at all the colours of all the excuse me, smoke and fire and sun. That looks nice.
Colours aren't picked up too well, but it's really quite pretty. The sun behind the smoke and all the clouds, kind of god rays and going out that way. Everything just kind of turned orange for a second there. My device is telling me I'm approaching the Corowa Sea-Tuff again. This time I'll be west of the airfield as opposed to east, like I was on the way out. So I'll be making slightly different radio calls. We're travelling due south here basically. No one responding there, so I think, oh yeah, airspace must be pretty clear. You can also see just forming at 11 o'clock a very dark black plume of smoke off of a paddock. Might be able to see that just to the left.
Traffic, Mike India Diamond, turning final, Fox 32 for touch and go,
That's someone in circuit for Corowa, so over the airfield, way out my way. Decent strength thermal, but I know there's better ones around with all these fires. Quite nimble, this little aircraft. You can see me rolling pretty quickly there into larger angular banks than you might experience on an airline or...
fire everywhere, but one that's close that probably give you a good thermal.
Yes, this one's ticking all the boxes. It's close, it's on the track to where I'm wanting to head. The smoke's really billowing up quite fast. There's a lot of factors that kind of telling me that could be quite a good one. A lot of burnt paddocks just down to the right there. Farmer that I know's done a good amount of burning.
Traffic making the India Diamond Star turning down wind of 32 contact
That's that same aircraft again, doing more circuits, so he's just staying around the airfield, way out my way. There's no conflict there. You can see right now I'm accelerating 90 knots or so. I'm just like, let's get there to that lift really quick, because there's no point hanging around when you can get to lift fast. And that's how you maximise distance, really. Climb fast and glide fast.
I just want to get to where this fire is before it burns all its fuel and goes out.
As well as I say there, not having all the fuel be burnt, and all the lift having risen already. Just want to get to it while it's still going. You can see even 100 knots there. That's towards the yellow arc, which is maximum rough air speed. It's not maximum speed in total, that's 145, but that's your max rough air that I'm flying around there, which is generally the highest cruising speed that you might want to use in a cross-country flight, especially if you're near bumpy conditions like rotor in the mountains, a few other places. But let's see what this fire's going to give me. Just below 3,000 there, but I'm not really worrying too much because there's this almost guaranteed lift ahead.
That's a thermal entry. Come back here. You can afford to cruise at 105 knots if you've got a nice 10 knot fire to get into.
Traffic Mike India Diamond Star turning final of 32 contact check Colorado.
Oh, it's awesome. It's bumpy as well.
If you can't tell, I'm really enjoying this climb. That's now 3,900, so 1,000 feet higher than not too long ago when we entered that thermal. Quite a challenge to stay in. All that lifting air is really trying to push you away from the center of the thermal, so you're going to kind of keep trying to center it.
9 knots average on my device.
There you go. That's the averager, saying about 9 knots average off this thermal. As there goes another 1,000 feet. Didn't take long to get up to cloud base.
Just about at the top here. There's a cloud above it, so not going to go near that.
And there we are. Basically 5,800.
Traffic Mike India Diamond Star turning downwind 1,800 climbing to 4,500 for departure towards the southwest Aurora.
Aurora traffic radar whiskey uniform Sierra is 5 miles to the west, 6,700 tracking to the south for Vanilla. Traffic corridor. Ah, 5,700. Ah, crap. Correction, 5,700.
I spread the altimeter there a little bit. Not the best. And you can see now the river weaving around in front and to the right, and that's that same Murray River as we crossed going out today. This street of clouds, however, is, while it was lined up at Benalla before, the northwesterly winds kind of redirected a little bit, and if I was to follow this street now it would take me quite a way off track and not back to Benalla, so I'm going to have to leave this street soon, unfortunately, as nice as it's been, as nice as the climb was, and even the cruise is now, as you can see, going along in still air or even going up.
This is moving a little far to the east, that street, so I reckon I'll cross back over.
And there's the decision to cross back over. So we're about 60 to 65 kilometres away from Benalla, and given we're at 5,500, which will, roughly give us about 50 kilometres, we're going to need probably one more decent thermal to make it back, and that's the last thing we're going to look for this flight, and that'll give us what we call
Yarrawonga traffic radar whiskey uniform Sierra 10 miles to the northeast of the airfield, 5,200 tracking to the south northbound. Traffic Yarrawonga.
this is a unique area where there's actually two CTAFs that slightly overlap between Yarrawonga and Corowa. One just to the east of where I am, one's to the west. Yarrawonga's just to the south of the big lake you can see there.
The heat's reached this height yet, I'm not sure, it looks like it's just started.
So there's another aircraft coming out this direction, so I set my intentions and where I'm going. So we'll know to avoid each other. Probably make a deviation.
Yeah, smoke's only about halfway up, so I'm not sure if there is a lift.
And indeed, I'm right, there's that fire down to the right there, but smoke's only halfway up to the altitude I'm at, so it's not going to be giving us too much lift, if anything.
If there's going to be anything off that fire, it's going to be about here, because this is about where it looks like the smoke might be going.
And that's where we were just then, just directly above it, and not a blip. Let's turn back directly on track, try and find some lift somewhere else. Bit of a blue hole in front, but plenty of clouds afterwards, so I'm still pretty confident that I can find another piece of decent lift and have final glide, as I was calling it before. Final glides are the height you have where you don't take any more thermals and you just take that last glide back to the airport or wherever it is you took off. You can have final glide into a paddock, but the final glide I'm talking about here is the last glide I'll do before landing. Pichelba, that area with the feedlot that we thermaled in or over.
Uniform 0 has crossed the river at Pichelba. Bundle operation.
Uniform 0 Kilo Whiskey, there are still a couple of really good climbs. Nothing cloud on the track to Benalla, so you might almost have final glide soon.
Thank you, I'm 4-5 just about got it.
I crossed the river at 5-3 and I'm still at 4-8, no, it's barely turned.
What's the smoke like close to Benalla? Is it any worse?
Oh, it's shocking.
That's Kilo Whiskey telling me he got some good climb still, that the smoke's pretty bad by Benalla. And
Shocking, hey?
oh, there you go, I'm a little bit skeptical of how he's describing it, but we'll see. Yeah, so I crossed at Bundalong the river, which is at the intersection between that big lake and...
Kilo Whiskey has 20 to run to Benalla, switching to Benalla Seatrack.
Bundalong's at that.
Quebec X-ray, have you made your turn point?
Yeah, I'm just outside north of Cora at the moment. Yeah, thinking of turning for home.
Should let all the discussion finish first, shouldn't I? There we go. Yeah, Kilo Whiskey letting me know what's happening a little further down on track. So he's pretty close to Benalla because he's done a smaller task, and also checking with Quebec X-ray where he is and what he's doing, which is he's north of Corowa now, and probably going to be coming home pretty soon as well. So everyone's turned, everyone's heading back home, and by Benalla it actually seems like it's a bit smoky, so we'll watch out for that.
We need another about 2,000 feet, so if we're at 6,000 to get back comfortably, and another 1,000 feet to get back, not comfortably. So one more nice climb, and we should be pretty good.
And there I am visually saying it. One more nice climb. 1,000 feet would mean that we'd just barely make it back, and another 2,000 feet would mean we'd easily get back, which is always how you want your glides to be.
Tailwind, so that'll help.
Much better to have a comfortable glide.
Down, so we've got a better glide ratio. Mind you, these bugs probably aren't helping too much with the glide ratio.
But there's a bunch of factors that impact final glide, not just the height. Obviously your wind. So I've got a little bit of a tailwind there, so the air mass that I'm in is going to be moving, as well as
If I get nothing, I can see a fire off at 2 o'clock. I might go over to that one if I absolutely need to climb. Can't find one on the way.
Yeah, so the MS I'm moving in is moving towards where I want to be, so that can assist my final glide. But something that's not going to assist the final glide is that many bugs. There's been a lot. There was a lot earlier in the day, and now we're later in the day. There's going to be even more bugs. So that's going to degrade the performance of my glider. So I'm just thinking mentally there, where do I get this last climb? Well, there's all these clouds, and there's a fire over there.
Closer. That might be the one to go to. Just off at this track, or this heading here.
And there's a little bit of smoke there on the ground. You might be able to make out 3 smaller fires that have occurred, and then a larger one further towards the horizon. So we might be able to get that one last climb pretty soon.
A few of them. That one's a bit more on track. We'll see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fires.
6 fires in visual.
Way home.
One just in front of me that I'm about to fly over. There's one to the right. You can make out the fire line there as well. And then the third one to the right of that again. So we're going to try all 3 of them. They're all pretty close together. And hopefully I should get one more of those really good climbs. Gain a good few thousand feet and make it back. But looking to the sky, those clouds are starting to fall apart. They're not as defined as they were earlier in the day. And as the sun's come down, the heating's slowed.
Just about over the first one.
So not too much soarable.
There's a really big one over on the right. This fire.
Too much soarable length in the day.
I think I'll head towards it because this one doesn't seem to be giving me much.
Here's a better view of the 2 fires there and the fire lines.
Back over this way. 1, 2, 3, turn. No, still didn't quite get it.
Not a lot around here, but I just know if I, just like before, if I wait just a minute or 2, this one might just completely set off and we'll be climbing real fast. So just giving it a bit more time in the weak lift. Really hoping.
Where'd it go?
That it's just about to just go off.
Oh, back this way. Let me quickly go to this one that's just here. That's an even bigger fire line.
Try the one next to it again. So that's 2 that didn't work. Let's try this last one. Just playing around as well. Ripping along real fast. Because I want it to either work or not work. Then I can get on with trying to get back. And there it goes.
Well, and I fell out.
So 3,100 feet, I entered that one.
Come on.
Still hovering around that number. But it's just about to go off, I'll spoil it.
Come on. My required LD's going up. I'm not actually climbing, I'm just trying to get in the centre of this thing.
I think that's it there. Here we go.
Oh, there it is. More speed was required.
One of the strongest of the season, I think, actually, this one. Really, really nice. Practically just stuck on the stops there is that Vario needle.
Well, that's 1,000 feet. How long was that? A bit less than a minute. Got to be over 10 knots, that.
This is sometimes why it's worth hanging around for a thermal to develop, because it could just be absolutely massive.
Whee.
You can see it there, almost trying to flip me over. Didn't let it though.
What a ripper.
Comment down below stonks if you end up seeing this thermal, you've actually watched the video. That way I know who's watched it, because this thermal, it's absolute stonks.
Wow. Suddenly I have final glide. That was great.
we go, final glide established. Plenty of height to make it back to Manila. So now it's time for a little cruise, and I'm actually going to relieve myself, so I'm going to make a little edit here, just so you don't have to watch that. Final glides are one of my favourite parts of gliding, when you've got enough to get somewhere and you're just enjoying the cruise back. So it's a lot of fun knowing that you're going to get somewhere and just enjoying the serenity of flying without an engine. Pretty good hobby. Not a whole lot of lift around you might be hearing. That needle's not going above the zero too much, so it's kind of nice that we got that good climb, because if we'd continued along the same track, I think, without having gained that height, we could have very well been in a paddock somewhere. And if we weren't in a paddock, we would have been taking a weak climb somewhere and wasting plenty of time. But I'm sure, having gained all that height quickly and doing this cruise, I could have overtaken, myself if I'd made the other decision. I've also cut my cruising speed back a little bit, just as another layer of safety, using even less height than my computer says I can use to try and get back. That wind noise you're also hearing, it's not actually the noise that I'm hearing. I think it's the air coming out of the vent in the front of the aircraft that's moving past the GoPro mic, so it doesn't actually sound like this. The gliders are pretty well sealed generally and don't make that much noise. If you're with a passenger or someone ever goes up together, you can very easily hear each other. You can talk, and really sealed ones you could practically whisper and you'll hear each other. Yeah, there's my point proven as the as I open the vent there. Get that wind noise again. Wonder if I can change that for next time. Very big paddock down on the right that's been burnt off. It's kind of rectangular with a triangle angular part of the northern tip of it. That's a very big paddock that's burnt off. That would have been quite a big fire. You can see also another fire being lit down to the right. You can see that fire line extending from right to left. It's happening pretty quickly if they light it. And they generally try and just burn off small sections at a time. So instead of having a huge singular fire, you get lots of smaller ones. It's a lot more easy to control.
Sarah is on a comfortable final glide and switching to vanilla Ceto.
Alright.
Letting Quebec X-Ray, the other glider on the chat channel, know that I've got my comfortable final glide. I'll be back at vanilla, so I'm changing off that frequency and I'm back on the vanilla frequency. So he'll be out on his own, and if he wants to talk to me, he can change to the frequency that I'll be on. I'm not actually within the area that I need to be on the vanilla frequency yet, but I'm just doing it a little bit earlier so I can listen to what's actually happening in that locale. There's another small mountain range down to the left there, which is the Chesneys. So not the Warbies, that long one that we went along on our way out, but the Chesneys. Yeah, another small, I guess, mountain. Is, I mean, only by Australian standards are they mountains. They're not that high, but they can give you some lift early in the morning or in the evening. A bit hard to ridge saw that low, but crossing those, and then over that same dried lake that we crossed on the way out, and back to vanilla. If this was a usual day with normal visibility, you'd be able to see it by now, but that extra smoke, definitely can't see it at the moment. I won't just go off what the computer says as well for final glide and its calculations. I'll do it in my head mentally using the map.
1 kilo whiskey is 5 miles south of the airfield at 3,600 inbound for second for 35 right, traffic vanilla.
But I'll also hear the, or I also know geographically, because I've flown in this location a bunch of times, what features are roughly at what distance. That was Kilo Whiskey saying he's 5 miles north of the field, so he's in front of me, a little way ahead, making it back, and I'll end up being behind him.
35 the preferred runway?
I think there's been a few gliders landing on 35, have also, there's been a couple landing on 08. Wind looks like 35 is suitable.
So a little discussion there about what's happening on the airfield. Tim said that people have been landing on runway 08, which is the one we took off along, and also runway 35, which is pointing towards the north, which is a little more into wind. So already we're quite far out from landing, but we're still thinking forward to landing safely and the kind of decisions that we're going to have to make as we get a bit closer. So yeah, thinking about which runway people have been using, what the preferred one is, so we can plan our circuit, as well as where everyone else is at the moment. So I've been on the CTAF for a long time now. I know the only other aircraft in here that at least has said anything on the radio is Kilo Whiskey, and he's going to be landing not too in the not too distant future. So I'll be able to have the airspace to myself once he's down, and I'm going to use that to practice something. A rating that I have. You'll see what that is in a few minutes.
I can just barely make out the airfield, and it's 13k away. So not the best visibility.
And there you go, exactly 13k away from the airfield, and I can't really see it, so that's not the best visibility.
Excuse me.
There's even a bit of smoke there, possibly. If things were to be substantially worse with the smoke, I've got tons of landing options down below, and let's say there was a huge fire by Benalla, there's no way that I would go and try and land there. I would just make our landing on purpose in a paddock elsewhere, just get down safely. That's always the number one. As I'm getting closer to the airfield and more comfortable with the heights that I'm at, I've actually sped up a little bit.
Uniform Sierra, 5 miles to the north, 3,200.
Down to the right there, that complex with all those buildings is an ammunition factory. There's a little bit of airspace there I've got to watch out for. Don't want to be too low over that facility. One of the few pieces of airspace that would impede much gliding in this area, otherwise it's fairly unrestricted. So you should be able to make out the clearing, being the airfield just beyond the nose there. There's also a little bit of sun on it. So we're pretty close now. You can see down at about 11 o'clock there, that's the concrete factory that we saw earlier on in the flight, and to the left of that is the chipboard factory that we took that thermal at when we were lower at the beginning of the flight.
Traffic, Glider Whiskey Uniform Sierra is 3 miles to the north, 2,500.
Manila traffic, Glider Kilo Whiskey is heading downwind for 35 right. Traffic Manila.
I'll wait for you, Tim. Thank you.
No problem.
So there we go, just checking what Tim's doing there. He's going to enter in circuit, so he's close to landing.
Tower traffic, glider Kilo Whiskey, turning base to 35 right, landing long. Manila.
So there we go, just about to cross the airfield again. You'll hear my flight computer go beep, which indicates that my task is finished. I've kind of crossed the start of my triangle again, and I'll be good to land. You can see a few gliders taxiing back in there, or being pulled by a car, of course. So most people are all down. Kilo Whiskey is almost down as well. There's the task completed.
Kilo Whiskey's on the ground and clear.
Yeah, I see you, thank you.
And I'll join you again in a second as we enter circuit.
Can you go around and do it again? That was long enough.
Almost.
You got plenty of height.
I'll leave that last little section up to your imagination.
Flaps set, undercarriage is down, speed 60 knots, we're trimmed.
We've also dumped our water ballast, so we'll be a lot lighter than we have been for the rest of the flight.
Uniform Sierra, turning base, 435 right, landing long.
Aircraft is in landing configuration. That's the Hume Freeway that, for those that know the area, the main road between Melbourne and Sydney. So now I'm just adjusting my approach angle. Be landing on the right hand side of between those two runways. You can see I'm using that air brake quite a bit in the landing process. That's what happens if you don't use air brakes, you'll just float and float and float. So you need to use air brakes. There they are. Try and keep the wings level as long as possible. That's Kilo Whiskey on the right there. And the left wing just drops there at the last second, but it's alright, it's got a skid.
Ah, very good. That was a good one. And there we are. Look at those bugs. Yuck. Needs a wash.
Okay, so here's the OLC information for that flight. Vanilla being here, my first turn point. Kalkan is out here, and Rennie's over here. So I didn't quite make those. If I turn those off just so we can get a bit of view, I'll scroll along. Took a while to leave Vanilla. Then as I went off, slow on the way out, that's the Warby Ranges there. And then when we headed east to that first fire, there's the nice climb off that. You can see the sharp increase in height. And then we used that to go some distance. Another good climb under the cloud. This is when we're with Whiskey Sierra heading out. That's Corowa there, across the river. Again, out to the east. Decent cruise there. Another good climb. That's where we made the turn. There's a climb off one fire. Climb off another one. Some more good cruises. That's where we had a look at the smoke and decided, no, that's too much. Let's cut back to the Cloud Street. Cut back along the Cloud Street. Great climb above that second last fire there. Back across the river. Waiting. Bang, there it goes off. Good climb. And then a long final glide. Back. Circuit and landing. If I turn the map to just terrain, satellite, turn the labels off, you can see, zoom in, the kind of train from the satellite. Vanilla here, there's the lake. That's the Chesneys, this is the Warby Range. As we go across Big Lake and the river, that's Corowa there with the airport. Out to the east, back to the west, and then back again. At this point, when this picture was taken, it was obviously quite green, maybe it was during winter. Yeah, so that just about shows it all. That's where it was in relation to Australia. Melbourne's here, Sydney's here. Just a very tiny section of the country there. Thanks for watching. Let me know if the narration was annoying or you want some more of it. And stay safe. Have a good one.